Welcome to the Wild Pitch Podcast, hosted by Brian Gales, Jimmy Gales, Brian Dorsey, and Christopher Rojas.
All right, welcome everybody to the ninth episode of the Wild Pitch Podcast. We are not coming from Play Like a Pro. We are all practicing some good social. We are in and out. And we all have children, and we're gonna have
We're
some
getting a live look at family lifestyle over here.
real life. We got Josh Gerson behind the glass. Has no idea about kids yet, so we're making fun of him.
Thank God.
Learned a harsh lesson one day, right, boys? But it's good to get together with everybody and do something during this horrible time. And while we are not going to lessen anything about what's going on in the real world, we'll just try to bring some baseball talk just to lighten the mood a little bit. And one thing I think we all wanted to talk about was there's an interesting thing going on with the Major League Baseball draft this year. And I want to discuss it with you guys and just let's really kind of dig deep and think about some of the ramifications for everybody. I think being a high school senior all the way to a college senior right now is these kids have a really difficult road ahead of them on many different avenues. So I want to discuss that and just speculate on what could happen and how this affects everybody. So anybody have any thoughts to start here?
Well, first off, they're talking about going from 40 rounds to 5, right? I mean, is that pretty much official?
So they're doing a minimum of 5 rounds, but they might go to 10. And I don't understand how they don't just do 10, but I guess if you don't do round 6 through 10, you do save, upwards to $1.5 million, $1 million to $1.5 million each team by not signing those guys. But an interesting thing that came out of, I was reading an article from Keith Law, who coincidentally went to high school, the same high school as me, Brian, and Brian. They, from the 2016 draft, 27 guys have made the big leagues that were drafted after the 5th round. So, that's a lot of good players come after the 6th round or after the 5th round. And so what they're saying now is they're only going to give $20,000 to a 6th round pick or to anyone that signed as a free agent. So a 6th round talent is only going to get $20,000 to play baseball. So, I mean, just think about that, how little that is.
Well, I think, and I think at some point maybe I don't know if I can dive into it right away, but I think that the smart thing to do. I think there should be a blanket signing bonus from top to bottom.
Yes.
And I can elaborate on that later or now if you like. But
no, let's get into it right now. I know this is a big subject for you, and I think I like it a lot.
So I think as a whole, the draft is a bad business plan. I think when you spend the millions of dollars that they do within those top 3 picks that they make, first 3 rounds, call it, or whatever they're spending up into the 5th round, it's not a good investment or return on your investment for what you get in terms of guys that impact the big league club, right? Now, I know there's a lot more nuance and a lot more that goes behind as to putting the draft together and picking players and signing them and placing them on teams just so you can have roster fillers and really be operational, right? But I guess an organization, when they look at their their potential prospects, they're really only keying in on those top 5 rounds as guys that they think are really going to be big leaguers, right? And after that, it becomes all right, fringe guys, it becomes organizational guys, it becomes position players that we need or pitchers that we need to really put together our minor league clubs. And the guys that come out of those, I guess, later rounds or free agent signings, those become flyers, right? And they become more of, I guess, the cherry on top. Generally speaking, I think you can say that. Is that fair to say that that's generally how it's looked upon?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
Right. So with that in mind, right, and you think about all the money that's spent at the top 5 rounds trying to find the next big leaguer. Um, I mean, I can use a few examples, but I'll start with this one. When I signed, and I wasn't drafted, mind you, I was a free agent signing, and but you know, I when I signed my second year in pro ball, which was my first year with the Padres, they had just had the year prior, they just had 7 first round picks.
7.
7. So through supplemental and so whatever trades they had or whatever
Right.
supplemental picks they
Compensation
for the
rounds, whatnot.
compensation rounds, right? So they had 7 first rounders in 1998. Um, one of them sniffed the big leagues
Wow.
at a couple calls, right?
One guy.
One guy. So I think if there's a perfect example as to why the draft itself is a poor business plan. That's you can point to that situation or that scenario and use that as your example and baseline as to why this is not working.
No, it's definitely such an inexact science, and we talk about it all the time. And like Brian Gels, you pulled up the slot money?
Yes.
So so
So going off 2019 numbers,
the first
the
pick gets
first pick
7 million
nearly
was it? Yeah.
eight and a half million.
so basically
Second pick
let's say Chris's
7.8.
Padres team had those 7 picks, which would probably be in the top 40 pick, right?
We could probably pull it up right now if I can
If,
pick up that draft that year.
but if you did 7 rounds, seven
So
first round
let's
picks,
let's
slot
go
money.
through the slot though. Let's see what that is. That'd be a fun exercise. Like let's see what that looks
Yeah.
like. Let
Yeah.
me see if I can get that. Hold on.
In the meantime,
19.
let me ask Brian Dorsey. The year you signed with the Phillies, who is your first round pick of your class?
Cole Hamels.
Okay, that doesn't.
Yeah.
That was my
They
roommate,
got
double
a
A.
they
That
got a
was your roommate,
tremendous
Chris?
discount. They signed him for 1.7.
Why they made a deal with him?
Well, that was prior to all the slot money.
Oh no, but that was at the time. That was big money. So
Yeah,
yeah.
but when you look at what they got out of a guy like that for 1.7 versus sometimes you see guys get 7 don't even make the big leagues. You know.
Yeah, I mean, well, Brian, who was your draft class first round pick?
James Loney.
And he
Greg.
had a nice career.
Yeah, great career. Greg Miller, who never made it.
There was another first round pick, you mean?
Yeah, yep. Second round pick was Jonathan Broxton, who had a nice career.
A reliever, pitcher, yeah.
Yep. I can't tell you his third pick. Fourth round was Delwyn Young. Played a few years, 4 years.
It's I think my class was Bubba Crosby, who, who was a fourth, fifth outfielder his whole career, right?
Yeah.
Did
Right.
okay.
So think about just that. Just think about that. So he gets to the big leagues. I mean, me personally, your first round pick, you're not supposed to be a fringy big leaguer. You're not supposed to be a 4A player.
You got to be an all-star.
Right. That's how I would view it. Or if I'm scouting, I'm saying, is this guy going to be a major league impact player?
Actually, everyday impact player. We don't have to be an
Right.
all-star.
Everyday impact player.
Right.
So if you look at it that way and you start to quantify it, the first round selections historically are not successful picks.
No. So, Chris, do you have your draft pulled up?
Yeah. So let's
All right, hold on a
let's
second.
start this.
You go. Give me the pick. Brian's going to tell me the number. I'm going to calculate.
Well, let's do this one first because, like I said, this was the year before I got to the Padres. But the year I was with the Pirates in 1999, did you ever hear of Bobby Bradley?
Yeah, he hits golf balls really far for a living now.
There you go. So he was the 8th pick by the Pirates, never got to the big leagues.
Never. Yep.
And I'll say this, and this is me tooting my horn. You remember pitching? You remember former major league pitcher, left-handed pitcher Blaine Beatty, pitched for the New York Mets.
Yes.
He was the pitching coach for our team in Williamsport, and he had me and Bobby Bradley side by side throw bullpens to see who had the better curveball. So if you're the first round pick and you're sitting next to a free agent signing, that's not a good look for you either.
Yeah, the one guy was a center fielder at New York Tech, and yeah, so we ran into Bobby Bradley on Long Island, Brian. Right? You were in a golf outing. Were you there, Brian?
Which one, me? Or,
Yeah, Brian
no,
Gels. Yeah.
I don't remember that. No.
Oh, it was me and Dad then. We're in a golf outing,
Oh, wow.
maybe out east, and Bobby Bradley's on the tee, just trying to out. You have like a out driving contest with the first round pick. Yeah, so that's what he does now.
All right, so I got that list.
All right, here we go. So, what number pick in the first round, Chris? Go.
20th pick in the first round, Vince Faison.
All right, Brian, 20th pick. How much money? If it was nowadays.
20th pick, 3.2.
Okay. Next,
28th pick, Garrett Baxter.
28th pick.
2.5.
Okay.
29th pick, Omar Ortiz.
2.4.
Chris, what draft year is this?
This is the 1999 draft year.
Oh, you're that old. Okay.
Yeah, buddy.
That was a 98 draft. That was drafted 23 years ago. Oh. No, 22, I bet. That's why I went to Tech. All right, next.
Next. 41st pick, Casey Burns.
How much, Brian?
1.8. Sorry.
So these are still compensation picks?
These are compensation picks now, right? 49th pick, Mike Bynum. He was the only one that got to the big leagues. So
1.5.
And he got sniffed the big leagues. Didn't have a career in the big leagues.
He just sniffed it. Okay.
All right.
A coffee.
51st pick, Nick Tresniak.
1.4.
That was the last one. How many, is that 6 or 7? Am I missing somebody?
Well, so they spent $13 million on nobody that impacted their major league team.
Right.
Today.
Today.
And those are the first rounders.
But now let's look at and it's just looking at my draft class, 2002. If they ended at the 5th round, they would have missed out on Russell Martin in the 17th. Eric Stoltz in the 15th, if you remember him, he, decent left-handed pitcher starter in the big leagues. Who else did they have here? Anyone? James McDonald pitched with the Pirates the 11th round. They still, and I think, nowadays they're seeing that, hey, we'll draft guys later on, but we can develop these guys, where I think in years past, it was the guys at the end of the draft were more to fill out rosters.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of been shown over time that some of these guys develop into big leaguers now.
I tell you what, San Diego did a poor job because if you look in the 3rd round, they missed on some guys. I mean, we're talking about Brandon Phillips. We're talking about Ben Broussard. We're talking about Carl Crawford. I mean, these are guys that they missed.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
So I played with both those guys. That was at their high school year that they didn't sign, or they signed. Brandon went to the Expos, right? That year?
No, that was his Washington. He was out of high school, didn't sign. Or he did. He did sign.
Montreal.
Yeah, $607,000.
All right, yeah.
It just goes to show you, these teams are missing right and left. There's guys all up and down the draft. Now we're going to go to 5 rounds.
But maybe that actually brings to Chris's point, where don't have a draft. You just giving guys 20,000, and now it's up to you to develop those guys.
Right. So here's my take on that, right? Because here's the other thing, right? That we're not factoring in, and again, it varies based on draft class, organization, how they handle things. But we know this to be true, and maybe this can sound salty, it's being guys that never made it, or me sounds salty, but how many guys out of first rounders make it just because they are first rounders, just because the organization invested in you, right? So they have to force you through the organization so that they don't have mud on their face, right? And you get to the big leagues, and maybe you're up and down, maybe you have some semblance of success, but you really probably didn't deserve to get there based on your minor league um, you know, work body of work. That happens a lot as well.
It happens all the time,
Yeah.
and even the
Right.
at bats that they accrued
Right.
to
They play over guys.
went further with those at bats.
Exactly. So they take away at bats from some other guys, right? They keep going up, passing guys who have better, minor league stats or performing better than them at the time. So if you take away these big signing bonuses as an organization, you're not as compelled now to move a guy through your system this quickly, undeservingly, right? Now you're going to look at your whole minor league system and you say, wait a minute, he's really not better than this other guy. Why are we going to move him? We don't have to any longer. If we're not investing millions of dollars in them, right? If we're just doing a blanket signing bonus. Everybody's starting at the same level. Everybody now it's truly going to be about merit, right? It's going to be about who are my best players. And we're not just moving this guy because we gave him $3 million. And this guy is sitting here because he can't get the same amount of bats, even though, you know what? He's showing that he's capable, but we only gave him 5,000 guys. We really can't let him play.
Yeah, I mean,
It levels the playing field a bit.
it does. That's a nice thing. I mean, we've all been affected by that. Now, Brian Gels, you go in the 36th round, and this is the inexact science of it, right? He gets drafted 36th round. Logan White, the farm director, right?
Yep.
And what does he say?
Logan White, he's scouting director.
He's the scouting director, so he's in charge of the draft.
Yeah.
That drafted you 36th. And what does he say to you after he sees you for how long? 2 weeks or?
No, first off, he told me, you're an area guy, really fought for you. We weren't going to take any more outfielders, but your guy kept fighting for you. And then I played well that first year for them.
Right.
So they, not that he said it, but the manager said, out of all these guys, you're going to play in the big leagues. He was wrong, but.
Well, that was the team that you were on too.
Yeah.
But didn't he say you're more like a 6th rounder? He thought something like that. He said.
No, there was another guy that said that. Yeah.
Oh, another guy. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, the draft is it's a numbers game. I mean, you get these kids.
I mean, I don't know this for sure, but if you look at the draft, especially you look at the college draft, where are all these players coming out of? The kids that come out of college, where are they all coming out of? Power 5 conferences, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, every single one of us, once we got to Pro Bowl, we played against those guys that came from the Power 5 conferences. And, outside of Brian Dorsey, who played at St. John's, and even at that time, St. John's Big East probably couldn't really compete with Power 5, right? Dorsey? I mean,
not at that time. The one thing about that conference then, we did have Notre Dame in the conference, and they were a top 5 in the country.
Okay.
So they kind of ran through the Big East there, but they were only there for a few years. But other than that, no. I mean, you had your Virginia Tech, you had your UConns, Rutgers. It wasn't comparable to any of the Power 5s. No, not by any standard.
But when we get to Pro Bowl, guys like us, Jimmy Gales, Brian Gales, and myself, we play at a low-level D1, and we go and we play professional baseball against these athletes that came out of the Power 5 conference. Is there any difference in ability?
No.
Not at that point, no.
No.
All right, so then there's that component as well. I think what happens is guys will stop taking these, they're relying on these top conferences. In theory, they think these kids are better, but
I actually remember thinking myself at that time, wow, these are guys I was watching on TV, Marshall McDougal, for example.
Right.
Watch this guy
He
get
hit 6 home runs
6
in
home
one game or
runs.
something? Yeah.
Next thing you know, I'm playing with him, and I'm like, he's just a regular guy. He's, you know.
But
I played with him because he stunk, right?
Yeah, I've been told by scouts though that there's not a lot of risk in taking those guys. If a kid from Florida State who has decent numbers goes out and fails, or oh well. But if you take a kid from a Division II college, he goes out and fails. Well, why are we taking a Division II kid?
Right. Well, then what does that say about scouting? Then are you really scouting? Are you? That doesn't sound like scouting to me. That sounds like mitigate. That sounds like mitigated risk, is what it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's also highlight that the Padres missed Albert Pujols in the 13th round.
You know who they took? They took. I can remember if I can remember this. They took a really bad third baseman.
Nope. In the 13th round, I have him as Tony Adler.
I don't even know who that is.
See,
I don't think he signed.
He didn't sign.
So the Cardinals take him, but the Cardinals missed on Albert Pujols too.
Right, because they took him in the 13th.
Yeah, I mean,
not the first.
Yeah,
they were finding him, So everybody missed Albert Pujols, but
I gotta say I don't mind the leveling the playing field with the 20,000. I mean, I don't understand
whatever
why
the number is. I don't know what the number should be, but it should be a blanket number. And all right, guys, you're supposedly the best. Let's see it.
Yeah, it's a tough call, but let's go back to now what these kids do, right? So, we go into our season this year and, we got some prospects on our team and they're thinking, all right, we got 40 rounds. If I have a nice season, a couple guys generated interest, hey, I want to just get a chance, get picked 20th round, 30th round, whatever, get my plane ticket and get out of here. Or, maybe a junior gets his college paid for and goes out. But so now, if I'm a junior, which as we know, the juniors in college, that's the leverage position, right? That's where you can get a bonus. I know Rob Gore from USC was drafted in the 15th round. I was the 16th rounder. Rob was a junior. He got $75,000. I was a 16th round pick. I got $1,500
as a senior.
As a senior. Right. So now when I'm in that locker room, all the guys, everybody got paid the same day. And these guys have like 500,000, 200,000, 75. I'm like, wow, we're in the same round. I could really use that 75 grand, but I was a year older and I didn't have college left. So now a junior though gets his year back. So his situation is, does he go right now, a 10th round pick, and take 20 grand? Or does he come back again as a junior? And, hopefully they do 20 rounds, which they're talking next year, and he gets 100 grand, 150. I think they're in a tough boat. I think in general, you're talking next year, the 2021 draft is going to be 5 classes in a herd. I'm sorry, 3 classes. Sophomores that are eligible because they are sophomores, but they're 21 now. Juniors and seniors. So you're in a herd of an extra, I don't even know the number, but you're talking major, major competition for those 20 rounds next year. Do you just take the 20,000 now and get out of here? I think it's just a really tough situation for everybody. And again, this is in the grand scheme of things, it's not a tough situation, but in baseball purposes.
Well, I think if you're those kids that we're talking about, right, you get ahead of everybody, go play. Don't hedge your bet and try to take 100 and try to get 100,000. You don't hedge that bet. If you're talking about, from third to first round, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're talking, even getting trying to get drafted again and make, get $100,000 signing bonus as opposed to getting 20 now and starting your career, I say you go play. Go try to get ahead of some of these guys next year. Go and get your opportunity, and try to make it for yourself.
I mean, I think we all generally have the same thought process anyway, and maybe it's not the popular one, but we all know we all went as senior baseball players, right? We were senior signs or drafts. So we were all 22 years old. And Chris, I think you were 21. I think, um, but I know for me, I was always considered the old guy. And, every spring
Yeah,
training.
no, it's a big difference.
Yeah. So, I
I
mean,
think you have to you get the opportunity and you want to be a major league baseball player, you have to go. And
right.
now the window is so small. Guys, it's a young game. It's 31 years old. You're old now. It's not like when we were playing. You could play till you're 40. Those days are gone.
Yeah. I mean, do they even have the
It's
same, like, we all, Chris and I played till 30 years old. Do they even have guys like that anymore?
I
Like,
don't not really. They don't want to even pay guys. They don't want to pay the minor league free agents.
Yeah,
yeah.
that was that.
Those guys
Yeah.
are in the Atlantic League.
That was your 6th year, that big 6th year where you get a new contract.
Yeah. And listen, in AAA, the few times that I had a cup of coffee there for a couple of years, those guys are all big leaguers, every single one of them, and they're making 25 grand a month, 15 grand a month. They were spending a lot of money.
They had
You know,
to split contracts. Yeah.
Chris, you spent
They don't.
a lot of time up there. Those guys have some money. They're killing it.
You mean I was making money after my 3rd year?
Oh, right.
I got released. So then I got signed. And then when I got signed, it was on a 1-year contract. And then when they wanted to re-sign me, they paid me like I was a free agent, like I was one of these minor league free agents. I was making
Yeah,
money.
Chris, because of being a minor league getting released the one time, he made money his whole career.
Right. I made my 3rd year. I
Yeah.
was already making $6,000 a month.
Wow.
But when I signed with the with the Pirates, my second time with the Pirates, I was making $9,000 a month.
9,000? Yeah, as soon as I became a free agent and they signed me back, that's when I knew my days were done. I get making 5 grand a month. I'm like, that's keeping me. So that was the end of me. Would have just told me, listen, can you go back down to 2,000? I would have said yes.
Took a pay cut.
This all
But they
means
don't-
is college baseball next year is going to be insanely good. You got a bunch of high school kids who aren't going to go, and they're going to go to school, and
Yeah.
and then you have all these extra kids who are getting the eligibility back. So put this all together, you're going to have some players at the collegiate level.
No, the college game, and there's going to be movement where guys are going to get squeezed out and squeezed into a lesser program and make that program stronger. I really think it's going to be crazy. And you guys all know, like, how good were we at 23 years old as opposed to 22 years old, right? Bodies start filling out.
Right. You start to mature physically.
Yeah.
I mean, we see it in just our guys in a year, like how huge they get. Now we're getting, we spoke to some guys this week. We're getting all these big boys are coming back, and they're only going to be bigger and stronger, and the confidence can be through the roof. They're going to be playing against a freshman who's 5 or 6 years younger than them sometimes. This is the most unique situation where you're going to have a kid that was a redshirt senior that they gave a year back. He's his 6th year. A couple of guys on our team, I call them Doctor. But
I want to just really quick because we're talking about the draft, and again, I'm cherry picking here because you can go in the first round, you can find your A-Rods and Griffeys and Jeters, you know what I mean? But the Houston Astros, in 2013, it took Mark Appel, right-handed pitcher,
big bust.
tremendous bust, right?
Yeah.
And he was given $6 million. He was slot money with $6 million. Second round was a guy I've never heard of. Anybody here heard of him? Andrew Andrew Thurman, right-handed pitcher, UC Irvine.
Nope.
No.
What's that in those two? What's that investment right there? Those two picks right there. What's that investment? That's a complete disaster, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Good question. Why wouldn't the teams look at something like this? Does the Players Association have something on this with the
Yeah.
draft?
But I
But-
think the agents have their claws into this. That's probably where this is really.
Well, they probably have influenced the union to include these guys, but the union just sold these guys out, agreeing to the 5 years. That Major League Baseball made a deal. We'll give you guys service time for this year if we don't play, but we're only going to do a 5-round draft. And those guys were like, yeah, no problem. Doris, I think you know about selling out the junior guys. Got a little experience being on the wrong end of that, right, buddy?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, unions aren't what they used to be. Put it that way.
True statement.
I think a lot of the guys in the big leagues weren't first round picks too, and they go, yeah, why am I giving this clown $8 million? Like,
Right.
he's making more than half the guys on my team in the big leagues right now.
Right. That's the other. And then how about this? How about when it was a thing for a little while, where some of these first rounders or top picks were getting big league deals on top of their signing bonus. So
Right.
you remember Xavier Nady, right? He wasn't a first round pick, but he was the Padres' first pick, the second round pick, or maybe supplemental. So he got a signing bonus and he had a big league deal. So he was making big league money in A-ball. How about that? So, I mean, look, he had a decent big league career, but he's one story. There's other stories of guys having those types of deals not making it to the big league.
Well, A-Rod had to go his first year. He had to be in the big leagues, but that worked out all right.
That worked out fine. 2014, another Astros pick. They didn't even sign this guy, Brady Aiken. They offered him $6 million. The slot money was like 6.2 or something. He turned down $6 million.
And he lost all that.
He blew out.
He blew out. He gets
blew
drafted
out.
by Cleveland the following year, gets $2 million. So he already lost $4 million. So he already made a bad $4 million decision.
Oh, he signed for the 2, Chris?
Signed for 2, and now his career is derailed. He's done. And the funny thing is, when I looked at him, he reminded me a little bit of, you probably remember this, Jimmy, because you remember everybody. Matt Harrington.
Yeah.
You remember that story?
Oh,
Dorsey, you
man.
remember that story?
Yeah, I remember the Harrington story.
So he was a first-round pick for the Rockies. They had supposedly his agent Tommy Tanza had a pre-draft deal for him at $4 million or $4 million. Colorado reneges. He goes in an uproar. They try to settle on $4 million. He passes on the $4 million. Goes back into the draft the following year. Padres take him in the second round, offer him like $1 million. Passes on that. Playing in indie ball this whole time. He gets drafted 5 times. Never sees affiliated ball, and never signs for a bonus.
Unbelievable.
He was a West Coast guy, right?
Yeah.
I remember that
There was like an
story.
article on him. He's working in Best Buy.
Jim, when we were in the Atlantic League, you remember we had 2 guys in that league when the draft had some weird stuff going on. One of them was Drew, Stephen Drew.
Stephen Drew,
Oh,
yeah.
he went and played in St. Paul's. Then he played in the Northern League. Yeah.
Then he went to Newark. I think he went to Newark. His brother, JD, went to...
Oh, that's what I'm thinking. JD Drew did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Weaver, Jared Weaver was the other guy.
Well, they were all Boris guys, though, right?
Yeah, so they didn't sign, and they went and played independent ball, and they signed before the deadline.
So I'm thinking a Boris guy now who's a 6th-round pick, he might tell them, go play independent ball, and we'll get you signed. And then maybe like a team like the Yankees swoops in, gives a kid $250. But I would bet to say that they would put some stipulation that you can't do that.
Yeah, they have to protect that.
Yeah. The bottom line is I'm excited for guys that are with our team being seniors, that maybe they're a hot commodity now because, they just need that $1,000. The juniors are going to stay away. I mean, that's just my mindset. I think it works out for them, but we'll have to see how that goes. Hey guys, have you noticed my mustache at all? The first time in my life.
It's awful.
It's the thing is, I went 2 weeks, and the guys at work still didn't even notice it, and I'm 34 years old. And then like on day 16 at work, they noticed it. And yeah, I guess I just,
What was the first response you got when somebody finally realized it? What did they say?
guy was in mid conversation, and this is like a guy that totally just like has trouble with life, and he's like, "What? Are you, is that a cheesy mustache you're trying to grow?" And the thing is, every time I always do a disclaimer if I see somebody. I'm like, "Oh, I'm just trying to grow this mustache for fun. It's the quarantine mustache." Meanwhile, I'm growing a mustache, and the virus can sit right on it. The one and only time in my life I'm growing facial hair. And it's the only place I think I can at 44 years old. Would have been nice to go through the minor leagues with like manly characteristics, but I had to go through it as a boy. That's my excuse. But yeah, so I think it's now, Brian. You go, Dorse. Talk about your draft day when you first of all you go you're facing Bobby Brownlee, another bust first round pick.
Chicago Cubs, right?
You have how many scouts are at your game? It's Rutgers versus St. John's, Brian Dorsey versus Bobby Brownlee.
There had to
Walk
be
through
60 guys. I mean, GMs were there.
What draft
60
year?
people.
98. I'm sorry. 02. 02 draft.
You always put yourself as old as me.
Yeah. So, going into that game, let's say, I was a guy who I think I was a fringe guy and had my interest, but you never know. And then after that game, I pretty much thought I sold. I pretty much stamped the envelope and I was good. Somebody was going to pick me up.
So every power broker in baseball, any decision maker, GMs, top cross checkers were at your game, and you throw what? Tell them about the game.
So me, Brownlee, I beat him 6-1, complete game. I think I may have had 8 or 9 Ks, few hits. It wasn't even close. But at the end of the day, the key here was they weren't there to see any other player except for Bobby Brownlee. And I've learned a lot about the industry since, and I think people should hear this because those guys that were at that game, their job is not to find a guy like Brian Dorsey. It's to make decisions on guys like Bobby Brownlee. It's to make $20 million, $5 million, $3 million decisions. That's their job. That's why they're there.
Right.
Now, there may have been some other guys in their mix there that had some, some area guys that saw me. And I did have some conversations after that game, and I felt confident. Went through a couple of pre-draft workouts off of that game. That was the last game I threw because we didn't make the Big East tournament. And then draft day came, and it was 3 days back then where we had it on the radio, on the internet. We didn't even have it on the radio. It was on the internet. I'm sure you guys all listened to your – so I had 3 days of misery because day 1 passed with nothing, day 2 passed with nothing, and day 3 passed with nothing. And even a few teams decided to pass on their picks. So it's a humbling moment. So needless to say, I go the 3 days, I don't get drafted, and devastation sets in. So what do you do at that point? It became I'm going to probably have to go play independent ball or I'm going to go try to get a job. Who knew? So a few days of decisions. And then I actually had agreed to go to the Frontier League, which is an independent league in the Midwest. I was going to Evansville, Indiana.
Otters.
Yeah. I was leaving on, say, a Thursday morning. On Wednesday night at 10 o'clock, I get a call from a scout. The Phillies called me up, asked me if I still wanted to play. And by that next morning, 7 a.m., I purchased my own plane ticket. Believe it or not, and flew down to Tampa. He promised they would reimburse me my ticket, but $1,000, and off I went. So, it was like a roller coaster ride. I'll be honest. you give so much to the game, so much hard work, and then and pretty much think that you put yourself in a situation where you were going to get drafted and you don't. So dealing with those, that was tough. I'm not going to lie, but it ended up. I ended up getting my opportunity, so I can't look back and complain. I think seeing what I see now and knowing the system, I think we look at this draft and what could happen, and I think I would tell guys, and Brian mentioned it earlier, it's a young man's game. So if your aspirations are to play, you can go back to school. And right now, with a 5-round draft, the leverage is being taken away from the player. So I think even though, the money may not be there, think about it long term. And maybe some of those juniors, I think, should think about still taking that opportunity if it's offered. I don't know if I'd go back to school. You lose the year.
Listen, it's excuse me. It's totally, you're playing with fire if you ever turn down an opportunity. And I think with, my brother, hearing a story about with him, how basically, and Chris mentioned it before, you're going to have the first 5 rounds, they're looking for big league guys that are impact players. And every round after that, it's going down to, I'm taking a flyer on this guy, or, hey, my short season team is in Brooklyn. Like the New York Mets are actually looking at a roster on the board during the draft, and they're going, hey, it's the 12th round. We don't have a shortstop to play in Brooklyn this year. Now I got 8 areas in the country. I don't know what the number is. You think maybe there's 8 regions in the country, 8 area scouts, maybe more. Probably more than
I
that.
think more, yeah.
So now those scouts are representing each area of the country.
And fighting for their guy. Take my guy. Take my guy. I got a shortstop.
Right. Every single area guy has a shortstop for him. Who do they take? They have to decide. They have to decide based on all those opinions to take one. So in Brian's case, Brian was slated to go about the 20th round, right, Brian? I guess?
Yeah.
15, 25, somewhere in there. Now they need an outfielder for Great Falls, Montana. The Dodger scout who also signed me and signed Brian says, I got a guy, I need him. They pick someone else's guy. And then, Brian, I believe they say, that they're not taking anymore.
Yeah, I'm not taking any more outfielders.
Right, we don't need another outfielder. They take another one. And, John Koziak from the Dodgers goes crazy. They go, sorry, no, we had to take that guy. Now they get in the 32nd round. They take another outfielder, right?
Yeah.
Take another one. The scout, who loves Brian, flips his lid, and they go, fine, we'll take Brian. So it's a battle. They take him. He ends up starting on that team.
Yeah, we had 8 outfielders when we started with that team.
But so now, but what about the guy who had an outfielder in Wisconsin that didn't get him? Is he better than Brian? Maybe. But it's a crapshoot, right? And if you get an opportunity, you got to go. And you're not, we're not talking about the guys that are the top 100 players in the draft here. But what bothers me about like the local kids, the local parents, the local coaches, even the kids I know, if one scout speaks to them, says anything, gives them a business card, that's it. In their head, they're drafted. I'm going in the next draft. They have no idea. I tell
give them my number. We'll talk.
Right. Yeah.
I'll hit him with a reality smack.
Right. So
no, it means nothing. You look at Brian's case. He had one guy really battling for him.
Right.
And then I use my case where I know I had several guys that liked me, and several guys because I had conversations and I wasn't drafted, and teams passed on picks. So, a crapshoot is the best word.
Well, and here's the reality too. So I'm sitting before the draft, and I know that I've filled out legitimate questionnaires for 7 to 8 teams. So that means that 22 other teams at the time don't even know who I am or are not interested, right? So I go in the 16th round, 22 other teams, I'm not even on their board, right? So maybe it's because they didn't see me. I'm in the Northeast, and I'm sure a lot of them didn't like me either. That's fine. Like Dad always said, you only need one person to like you. And I think it goes for the same thing with a girl. Just need one. But, uh, um, but I think it's such a tough thing. And I went into my draft hoping and praying I was going to be the last pick in the draft. I think I hung out with some scouts. I studied the business. I knew how tough it was. And for me, I was like, and I hope I'm just the last pick. And then I go to graduation, and I see a guy that was working for our coaching staff, a young kid. And he goes, "Oh, you're going to get drafted in a couple of weeks?" I'm like, "I have no idea, man. I don't, it's got to be 50-50. He said, "Oh, Coach Hirschfield said you're going in the mid-teens." And I'm like, "He did? He said I was going in the teens?"
Is that past?
So I'm like, "No way. What does he know?" So now I'm watching the College World Series, and the draft was on, and guys are playing on TV, and I'm home by myself, and I'm watching, and they're like, "Oh, so and so was just drafted in the 10th round," and I'm like, "Oh, wow, it's getting to the teens," because they did 20 rounds a day or 25 a day back then. So now they say, "Oh, this guy was just drafted in the 14th round," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm coming up." Meanwhile, in my mind, I'm going, "There's no chance they're taking me on the first day," but I'm starting to get anxious. Like, man, I want to go in the 40th or 50th round, but I also want to go right now. So I get a call from Sal Agostinelli, who we all know. He calls me like a couple, maybe 10 minutes after I hear some kid went in the 14th round. Because now remember, the draft is not on TV. It's
It's
not
on the internet.
No, it's not on the internet either. We're really old.
Oh, you couldn't even listen to it.
We
When you
didn't
hear
have
the end of
we
this
didn't
story,
have internet.
you're going to know
Yeah, all
how
right.
we are, okay? The internet was just coming out. It was not anywhere. So Sal calls me, and I know Sal isn't taking me in the teens, but I know he might take me late. He goes, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "What's going on?" And he's just being a little weird on the phone. He goes, "Hey, anybody call you? You get drafted or anything, or you hear anything?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." And he goes, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm just checking in on you. We'll talk to you later." And he hangs up, and in my mind, I go, "Oh my God, does he know that I got drafted? And he wanted to congratulate me?" I'm like, I think that's what happened. And it turns out that's exactly what happened. And I get a phone call, and then now I'm already drafted. I get a phone call. I don't know it. 10 minutes later from Ed Mathis from the Dodgers. And he calls me collect.
So you had to pay for his phone call.
Took it out of your bonus.
I wish to this day, God rest his soul, he passed away. I never asked
Jimmy,
him
hold
why.
on. You just got to the point of how old you are.
Yeah.
Whoever's listening to this, unless they're a parent, they don't know what a collect call means. You got to explain.
Unless they have a relative in prison.
Yeah. So, yeah, for the kids at home, the collect call is you go to a payphone, right? It
Yeah,
has to
it
be
was
from a
painful.
payphone.
Yeah.
So, and you say you can call
The
somebody, but they have to accept the charges on their phone bill.
Right,
So I get
the
the phone
operator
ring.
gets on, right, and says, "Will
right.
you accept a
That's
call,
right.
a
Right,
collect
the
call?"
third party goes, "Do you accept charges from?" And he gave me a phone number. And again, because I'm like hoping, and I'm like, I'm not going to say no. I'm like, yes, I do. And it was Eddie Mathis. He goes, "Jimmy, we got you," and forget about it. Now,
I feel like the Dodgers need to hear this story because that is just too late of a time for this to be happening.
where was Eddie Matthews that he knew I got drafted, yet couldn't tell me
Yeah.
on a
Or-
real phone?
Or couldn't get to a real phone.
And how do I not ask him about this years later?
That's unbelievable.
I used to hang out with him all the time at games afterwards, but then what do I do? Back then, nobody has a cell phone. I'm home alone. I called my dad. I called my mom. Well, no, I didn't call them. I can't reach them. So I call my grandparents. Nobody's home. I'm sitting there for an hour running around
Where's Brian? Brian, where were you?
I don't even know.
I'll tell you, Brian. You're at, and this ties into Brian Dorsey. Brian Dorsey, you were probably there. You guys were playing baseball at Kings Park High School in a summer league game. So I know you guys are there, and I drive, and I get to the field, and you guys are walking off the field because the field was wrong. And I remember I see Brian on like that dirt path before that back parking lot. I tell him I just got drafted, and he high-fived me, and I followed him over to their next game. I was just on cloud nine. Yeah, I couldn't get in touch with anybody, and just wild stuff, man. But the collect call is always.
That's great. That is unbelievable. I love it.
Yep. So, but yeah, it was pretty. Brian, you're going to 36th round. You're waiting all day, and I'm playing in Akron at the time for the Indians, and I'm like just dying.
Yeah, I was listening at that time. It was on the internet, same draft as Dorsey, and just sitting there every round going. And I remember Tom Merkel, who was a teammate of mine at Tech, got drafted in the 16th round by the Marlins that year. He had just sent me an instant message on AOL. He's like, "You hear anything yet?" I said, "No, I'm giving up." And then as I sent that, I heard my name come on, 36th round pick, 1036 or whatever it was. I don't.
Was Dad and those guys around you at the time? I don't remember. I wasn't home, so.
Yeah. Dad, I was home. Dad was home, and one of my teammates from Tech, Brian McMurray, was there.
Oh, really?
Dawn was there. Yes, we were just kind of hanging out, but it's crazy how like the.
So you guys were celebrating, having a party, and I was miserable.
Yeah. Two buddies are yeah. And
opposite sides of town.
So when Brian called me, and this is a very true story, he tells me, and I had a deal. I had to buy my buddy on my Akron AA team a hat if my brother got drafted. So, but he calls me, and I'm actually sitting on the toilet bowl when I find out from Brian. It was before a game, and this is a true story. I don't mean to get so sentimental, but there were tears on the tile floor.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
Nice.
Well, we had spoken like
cool.
a few, probably 10, 15 minutes before that. You're like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll get you an independent job." And
yeah. I remember I was
you're talking him off the ledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably was like, "Yeah, that ain't happening either." But Chris, you want to run through quick how you got signed real quick?
I signed. I went to Indie Ball first.
Well, you couldn't. You were my draft and on my team, but you had injured the year before. You weren't playing your position. So
Right. So I was still recovering from Tommy John.
Yeah.
Which in theory, I was supposed to redshirt that year and come back for a fifth year, but I was like, I'm not doing that because of the whole Pro Bowl thing. Because remember, Chris Briller was like our example of an older guy. He was 23 years old, got his 400. He's like, what he like 406 or 420 or something like that. A senior.
Yeah.
He doesn't get drafted. They say, "Oh, you're too old. You're 20. You're 23 years old. You're too old." So it was like, you know what? I'm not sitting out my senior year. I don't want to hear that. So I came back from my Tommy John surgery 5 months after surgery playing. I was playing.
That's amazing in itself. But
so then, go through that whole season, don't get drafted. But had the independent ball lined up because of Chris Briller. I went and played in the same team that he was on the year before.
Yeah, you and I were both going there.
Van Schley, yeah, Van Schley was the guy who ran that team, right? So go play there. I stunk there. I was, I was still recovering, so I stunk when I was there. But while I was there, I got invited to a tryout that the Pirates were holding because the Pirates were big into signing indie guys, and they had a 40-man tryout in Chicago after the season, after when the Frontier League was over. So drive to Chicago with one other teammate that was also invited from the Canton Crocodiles, and it was 40 guys, 20 position players, 20 pitchers, and it was a big league workout. So they did all the position plays, the IO and the 60 and all that, and BP, and then they go live for the pitchers. So, I'm there at 9 o'clock in the morning. I was the last guy out of 20 pitchers to get on the mound. It was like 5 o'clock at night in the evening now. So I finally get up there, couldn't breathe while I'm, because it's like this is my only opportunity, right? So I get on the mound, can't breathe.
How's the arm feeling at this point? Are you feeling healthy or
I,
hurt?
I wasn't feeling. I never at any point felt hurt. I just, in theory, I wasn't fully recovered though.
You were just building back up still.
Right, building back up, and I'm letting it loose, and I was probably like 89, 92, and trying to get after it. But when I threw my breaking ball, that's when it all stopped. Like that's when the guy who was running the tryout, he was actually the pitching coordinator for the Pirates, and he goes, "Hold on a second, throw that again." And I was like, "Sure, why not?" I was like, "Here it is again," and he was like, he kept calling it a snapdragon. That's where I figured out what a snapdragon was. And since I was the last guy, we're walking off the field. He pulled me over. He goes, "Listen, would you want to be a Pirate?" And I go, "Yeah." And at the same time, while he's holding that tryout for the Pirates, there was scouts from Asia there, from like Korea, I think. He goes, "What about if these guys want you? Would you want to go with them?" I go, "Well, I guess so. Yeah, wherever I can go play." Yeah. He's like, "Hey, give me a couple days and I'll let you know for sure. I'll figure something. Either you'll be with me or you'll go with them." And I was like, "All right." And it was pretty nonchalant, just like that.
Wow.
And so I drive back from Chicago back to Long Island. The next morning, I'm at Mike Brown's house. The next morning, he calls me up. He goes, "Hey, need you to get on a plane and go to instructional league."
Wow.
I was like, great.
Wow. Yeah.
I always
That's
forget
great.
that story. That's who was the pitching coordinator?
Bill Brick.
Oh, that was Bill Brick. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's your guy. That's your
Yeah,
sponsor.
he was my guy. Yeah, exactly. He was my rabbi.
Yeah. Listen, we all need that. But you know what's important for people to hear too? That you could be a nice and a good baseball player, but it's so important to have that one major tool, right? Like I can field,
Right.
and no matter what I did, I was always pretty much a top fielder at a workout, at a tryout, or when you came to watch me play. So I had that one tool that caught attention. You have your Snapdragon, and I think Brian, my brother at the time, all around player. But I think your tool that really stood out was how fast you were. I mean, at the end of the day, I always tell everybody you kind of did everything really well. But as a center fielder, and that's what the scouts always told you, is like you better hit homers. You better really hit to play the outfield. And I don't think people understand like what it really takes to play those positions and the type of impact you got to have. Like Dorsey, what was your thing that really caught attention? You think? And you're a converted shortstop, just figuring out pitching at the time, still.
Yeah, I throw myself into like an odd mix there. I don't know if I did something really well or if I was just a guy who, had a body type that guys would hear like, this kid's not even a pitcher. He's a shortstop who's on the mound. So I think that sparked a lot of interest. Like, oh, wow, what does his future look like? You look at some of the other guys who did it, like a Joe Nathan and right in this area and some other guys that come to mind. But I don't, I had a free and easy delivery and a good arm. I was a position player that I couldn't hit. So put that all together and I got a shot.
Well, No, but that's a perfect example of just another guy. Like when Roe was just talking about the draft, like, a late round or a free agent guy that has huge upside. And, now that you say that, that's exactly what you were. You looked like you were 16 years old when you were in college still.
Oh yeah.
A
Yeah.
16-year-old looking lanky, long, athletic. I mean, that's a major tool. That is a tool in itself. Um, and getting back to what you said, like when you're facing Bobby Bradley, I mean, Chris, you and I used to scout together when we were working with the Rockies and the Diamondbacks at the time. And I think, Doris, you're right. There's times where when we went to a game and, Chris and I went to St. John's, for instance, we were there to see Joe Panic. And,
Mhm.
Joe Panic wasn't up or in the field. Chris and I were hanging out talking, you
Mhm.
know. And don't get me wrong, we're watching that game pretty closely because we're psychos, but you really are focusing on the guy that you're there to see and
Oh,
give the
absolutely.
support,
I
you know.
saw that firsthand. I mean, I was in that game against Rutgers against Brownlee. I was very aware of the situation, and I was seeing firsthand how 60 guys are there, and 60 guys had to go to the bathroom when I came out for my inning.
Right.
And then when he was out there, I mean, guns are up, locked in, no conversations. They're focused. When I'm out there, I'm not. I'm not on anybody's radar, per se.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show people that these guys have a job to do, and a lot of times it's a specific job that they're there for, and that's what they're doing. Yeah, occasionally a guy will get drafted or seen through something like that because he does some special stuff. But at that point, I mean, we were a few weeks from the draft. I mean, it was crunch time for those guys.
Right.
Their jobs and what they do for their livelihoods are there. That's what their focus was. It wasn't on let's find the diamond in a rough or some other guy. It was, are we drafting Bobby Brownlee in the first round? And if we are, is he worth our fifth pick, or is he a guy who's going to 20? Like, and how much money and things like that. Important stuff.
Right. And no, and what you were saying, like I had some interests for a couple of years. They were just waiting for me to grow because of my glove, basically. They were just waiting for me to grow. So I knew, like, even when I was at Suffolk Community College, and this is what my father would tell me, he's like, wow, those guys they're there to see you. And I'm like, really? He goes, watch them when you're not up. They have their back to the field. It's always like the same guys who are awesome guys we all know now. They would come, do their thing, and when I walked up to the plate, everybody turned around and had the stopwatches out. And I remember, like, in my senior year, I'd be stretching down the left field line, and it was only maybe one or two teams at a time. They're on the fence just staring at you, and it was like, all right, this is legit. And Ro, from this year, I thought I was so pumped for the guys at New York Tech.
Yeah.
We come out and it's, I don't know, 31 degrees with a sick wind chill, and it's a night game, and we're throwing in a dark batting cage in Myrtle Beach. We find like a lightly lit place, but 7 guys came over as a group and watched our team take batting practice because we do have prospects on the team. And I was like reminiscing. I'm like, that's what it was like when we were there, and they were coming to see me and Chris and our catcher at the time. And I was like, all right, I said, guys, that's a legitimate sign that you guys are getting interest. And a lot of them did get some follow-ups. They're in the Major League Baseball pipeline, which is an internet thing now. Brian, you know about that? These guys, they don't get a card from one team. One team puts you in the pipeline, you're in for every team.
So they act like the bureau for everybody now. Almost.
Yeah. So if the Cincinnati Reds like somebody, they give a guy the link. He's in the system.
So any organization can now know who he is, but they won't have to report on him though, right? They'll just know he's in the system.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, right? I mean,
but some of the measurables come in, like all of our, we had a handful of guys that had to go see an eye doctor and get a certified eye test and then upload it to this thing, which was pretty cool, So it's everything, it evolves over time. But I know with us, right, Brian, I mean, my brother, you and maybe Doris, did you guys get those thick packets from the scouts to fill out, like psychological and whatnot?
Yeah, I filled out a handful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seemed like it was more medical.
Medical records. That's when you know a team likes you, and even then, you're still so far away.
So I also had back then Pat Short of the Scouting Bureau. I don't know if the Scouting Bureau still operates like that.
No, it's not around anymore.
They would like you. In my particular case, he liked me.
Right.
And he would write a report. That report went to all 30 teams.
Yeah.
So
and
at
that's
that
when
point,
they would then send guys out and see you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, there was plenty of guys who did not get a report written by him because maybe he didn't like them that were drafted because, like you said, you only need one guy from a particular team.
That happened with me with him. He didn't like me as much as the other scouts. So he didn't put a report in the Major League Scouting Bureau until he's kind of at the end of the year. He goes, you know what? This guy's going to get drafted. So he told everybody about me. In our last game, Chris, in St. Francis, I had 3 teams there, and they all go, hey, we just got your name in the Bureau yesterday. And it was a last-minute thing. But and you know what? Listen, Pat, at the end of the day, we're just an organizational guy. He was right. You know, it wasn't a big league. I didn't make it to the big league. But had he filled out a report for any one of us, then yes, you get more attention at the time.
Right.
So I guess the pipeline.
That's what happened my junior year. Yeah.
So you were right. Pat put you in for your junior year. He always liked you. Yeah. I was a late bloomer, last minute. Finally got fast enough. Finally grew a little bit. So
Brian, did the pipeline take over for what the Scouting Bureau used to do, basically?
Sounds like it.
Yeah, I guess it just they don't. Do they have scouts though? The pipeline?
No. It just streamlines the information. You know, like
database. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a platform for info. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this way the kid doesn't have to go on there. I mean, these kids they're writing paragraph after paragraph on, you know, what's their strong attribute as a player. Like, that just goes at every team, so they don't have to fill out 20 of them.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the whole thing's kind of ridiculous too. Like,
it is wild. Yeah,
I think we're in an interesting time to really see what happens with this. It's just the start of like a multi-year thing. What's going to happen?
Well, this is gonna snowball into something else going forward. This modified draft is probably going to snowball into something else. Remember, they're also cutting back, they're cutting back affiliates. So some of the affiliated teams are getting cut out. So there's not going to be a need for this many signings. This is going to have, this is going to probably be their first taste of how to go forward with the new draft system or draft, amount of rounds that they want to do. And obviously, because now they're going to rely on some, I guess, independent leagues to be more of a source of talent for them to pluck out if needed, to pluck players out of.
Yeah, they're taking advantage of the situation to experiment and see. And I know there's an article I got to read in The Athletic by Smithtown's Keith Boyle once again. And I want to read it because he's talked to some big-time guys behind the scenes and what they plan to do and how they plan to cut the minor leagues out a little bit. So
I think one thing we can say to guys who are listening is make sure you stay ready through this time, because when the time comes for these teams to do whatever scouting they can, it's going to be modified. It's going to be fast, and don't wait to get ready. Be ready so that when the time comes, you're ready to go and showcase yourself.
And that's what our guys are under orders to treat it like a combine. They might be a combine, so you better get your 60 up. You better be able to jump and just be as athletic as possible, and your arm better be healthy. And
the one scary thing that just came to my mind right now is if there is a draft but no season.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been
Because
thinking about
what could happen with that too. If there's a draft and no season, the kid then you fast forward to next year, kid may just get spring training and his career's over.
Well, I thought about this, and I think I don't want to butcher the name, but the kid John who signed with the Padres used to play for you guys, right? La Rocca?
No. Reese Kinnear.
Yeah.
No. Recent signing.
Kyle Young?
No. I'll get you the name, but he signed this offseason, right? A few
Oh,
days.
John, Milwaukee, La Rosa.
Yeah,
John,
La Rosa.
yeah.
So La
Coach-
Rosa signs.
Right. He
Gonna
didn't
go
get a
his
chance to play yet.
right? Gonna get
He
his
didn't get it-
opportunity.
yeah.
Wouldn't be
season.
surprised, unfortunately, for a guy like that. And hopefully this
Right.
doesn't happen, but he then never plays.
Right.
You
No,
know,
that's
you know.
Somebody with that. Hopefully not Johnny. He's a great kid, but yeah. Listen, there's going to be some stories out there from all this, and as we know, in every walk of life. So listen. I think I'll leave it with this. Last word of advice I have is, no matter what anyone tells you or any hype that's built up around your name, or you are so far away, you got to think that you got to keep working. You just never know what's going to happen. And there's always somebody across that country that's better than you. And just keep going, man.
No
You know.
finish line, like you say, Jimmy. No finish line.
Right. There is no finish line. And especially if you're around here, there's guys that are a lot more polished.
Totally true.
So, but,
All right, we're entering Joe Rogan territory here with the length of this podcast. So, Josh, you got anything you want us to cap off with before we wrap it up?
No, I think you guys hit a ton of really good points, a lot of interesting stories and insight. And I think you've given a lot of people a lot of things to think about.
All right, well, great. So, anybody else got anything they want to chime in on before we take it to the easy?
No, Jim, go shave.
I'm riding this one out. I don't want to look like totally ridiculous for the next podcast.
Kind of look like Tom Selleck.
Mr. Baseball.
Yeah.
There he is, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, folks, tuning in again, and until next time.